What's up, friends? Welcome to Web3 Academy, a place for entrepreneurs, creators, and marketers to explore and learn how to use Web3 to transform business models and create thriving communities. Enjoy this next episode. GM, what's up, Web3 doers? It is Web3 Academy, the weekly doer spotlight. And today with us, we have Danielle Eagleson and Krystin Wiggs from Proxy to talk about PR and the media and what's going on in Web3 and what are they thinking about Web3, both the good, the bad, and the ugly, and what can you be doing in your business to make sure that you're prepping for PR and the media and telling the best story that you can for your business, which we know is not always easy. So really excited to have Danielle and Krystin on the podcast today. But before I jump into their bio, as always, I'm here with my co-host, Kyle. What's up, Kai?
What's up, friends? Happy to be here as usual.
So before I introduce, or as I introduce Danielle and Krystin, I just want to give you guys a little bit of a background on them because they have incredible experience, both of them. So Danielle is the senior manager of earned media at Proxy, where she focuses on social media, public relations, and community building. Before joining Proxy and jumping into the Web3 world, Danielle spent many years in public relations and media relations in the hospital and healthcare industry. She also spent some time in the motorsports industry doing marketing, PR, and social media for an Indy car driver. That sounds like a lot of fun. And in her free time, she loves to read books and dote on her two golden retrievers, who maybe we'll see at some point in the podcast. I don't know. It'd be nice to see them, though. We never complain about dogs here. And then we've got Krystin as well. Krystin is Director of Communications at Proxy. She began her professional career as a newspaper reporter in Phoenix. After a short stint in the political world, she became a publicist for professional athletes. From there, she worked in healthcare PR for one of the largest hospital systems in the US. And then last October, she joined Proxy as their Director of Communications. And over the last 6 months, Proxy has become a Web3 company, which we were just chatting before jumping on the podcast, happened, I believe, after both Danielle and Krystin joined the company. So their rabbit hole story will be quite interesting because it sounds like you were both thrown down the rabbit hole, maybe not by choice, but seems like it's a good thing. So Danielle, Krystin, welcome to the podcast. So happy to have you here.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. So we love to just start with learning our guests' rabbit hole story. Danielle, we'll go with you first, and then Krystin will go over to you. Just tell us about how you sort of fell down the rabbit hole, what that was like, and maybe why you stuck it out and stayed in Web3 when sure. I'm sure when it happened that way, it would have been easy to exit out.
Yeah, as you mentioned, we joined Proxy in October. At the time, was not a Web3 company. Kind of made that pivot in January of this year. So it was definitely very new to me. I had heard of crypto. I knew what Bitcoin was, but didn't really know what Web3 was or anything beyond just the surface level. So we spent a lot of time just digging in and learning as much as we could, reading articles and watching YouTube videos and just kind of giving ourselves a Web3 education. It was definitely scary in the beginning, just coming into this whole new world. But it was really interesting to me just to be learning something totally new and something that seemed to be really important just for the internet and our privacy in general. It was something that I thought was pretty exciting and that I wanted to be a part of. And I just had a really great team at Proxy that I wanted to stick with and just stick it out and see what happened.
Yeah. So obviously I have the same story as Danielle. But
did you guys join at the same time? Like how close together did you join?
We started at the exact same time.
The exact same day.
We worked together. Our last job in the hospital system was together. So we're kind of like, it's funny, we've become like a little package deal in our career. Like we're like little PR partners. working for companies. We don't work for ourselves, but we definitely, our careers have like followed that trajectory for several years now.
This makes sense why we got you both on the podcast at the exact same time.
Yeah, you guys do everything together.
On it by ourselves. Like, no, I still have to be there too. So, but yeah, Proxy, like we had really just like started to feel comfortable at, like anytime you start a new job, especially like coming to a totally different industry, like from healthcare to tech, and a startup even. So like, that's just even on top of being in tech, I feel like that's like a whole other thing to get used to, and learn. But they believed in a lot of the, like what they were working on before they became a Web3 company was like everything that Web3 cares about. So they, as far as like, owning our data and having control over user tables and just knowing what's basically happening to your data. So it made sense. Like it felt logical, even though we didn't even really know what it was. And then as we started learning more, and went down the rabbit hole, like I have to say, I think we were so lucky because it literally became our job for like 4 months to just learn it, to sit in and listen on the Twitter spaces and, dive down Discord server, like, like it was like jumping into a frying pan. But at the same time, like, I feel like when most people are learning about Web3, they're doing it like at night after they finish their other job, like on the side. Like I felt so fortunate that it was literally like 8 hours a day. I'm just supposed to be sitting there learning. So I think we were really fortunate in that way. But I still don't feel, I feel like there's still so much more to learn, of course.
The rabbit hole never ends in Web3. You just continue to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And as you unlock things, it unlocks a whole nother rabbit hole you got to go down. So don't expect that to stop anytime soon. I have a question. You guys have been down this rabbit hole for what are we in? Is it June? It's June right now, right? So 6, 7 months, no, 8, 9 months, I guess, if it was October, 9, 10 months.
Well, we started in like end of December is when it started
going
Web3.
Yeah. Okay, so you've basically started since prices have been going down from the very top, because prices started to go down in November in this industry. So I'm curious from a PR perspective, you guys are both PR experts. What have you noticed in this industry over the first, your first, half a year in this space? Does the media hate Web3? This is what I kind of think when I think of PR, when I think of media. There's a lot of bad stuff, in my opinion. I don't know what you guys see, but give us the kind of high level, like how are we doing in terms of PR as an industry? What are you seeing, or what have you noticed so far?
Kyle, you've invited me up to my soapbox now, and it's going to be really hard for me not to be like preaching. But yeah, I mean, I would say I don't think the media hates Web3. I don't think they know what Web3 is, but I think they might hate crypto. Like, I think that as they understand that, I just don't think they understand it. So it's hard to cover it in a meaningful way outside of scams and rug pulls or like crashes, right? Like that's, I think, when they don't have that thorough understanding of it, and you have to stay surface level, that's what they're able to cover. And I think it gets clicks and people like to watch a train wreck, right? So I think that's how it's covered right now. And I mean, even like Danielle and I both, I'm sure you guys do too. It's like when people, your friends and family hear that you're working in this area, it's like the vitriol you get. And especially if someone even utters NFT, it's like, oh my God, like, can we like put this back in like the box, or, like, it's just, I think it's really intense. But no, I mean, what I've observed is like incredibly kind, caring people who are willing to share their knowledge and teach you from on Twitter, like from just a Twitter conversation or whatever. And I've observed people building really amazing things, and I don't ever see the stories. I think I shared the link before the we started recording, but I did love a story that came out of ETH Denver. And I believe it is from like a communications firm, like worked to place the story. I'll have to go back. There's a Twitter thread where they started interacting with me. But that was coordinated by PR professionals who like embedded a journalist at ETH Denver with teams, and like they actually learned what people are building and doing. And I think that's the kind of thing that of course, that's what I would like to see more of. I mean, I think there's amazing human impact, like that this has impacted people's lives for the better. I'm sure there's a lot of people have lost money too, but there are like really amazing things that are happening too, and they're just not getting covered. And actually, maybe this is like a good way to bring this up. Like, I don't know if you guys know Michael Littig, but he is with Hug XYZ, and it's like an incubator for NFT projects. I stumbled across his Twitter thread of like, he's worked with refugees for like decades, completely unrelated to working in Web3. And he just went over to Kenya and onboarded a bunch of refugees at one of the camps there and gave them their learning certificate in the form of like of an minted NFT for them for the education certificate. And if you're a refugee in Kenya, like that's all you have for education is your certificate. And frequently when you have to move in the middle of the night because you're in danger, you can only grab like your phone, your kids, and like that's it. So your education certificates, like you have to start over again and again and again. And this is like, to me, a really interesting case study of how an NFT can positively impact someone's life. And, I mean, these people, their life isn't like cured and perfect because they have this NFT now, but like it could build. And I think that's the type of story, like, NFT NYC is coming up soon. Like, I want that to be a big story. And Danielle and I are actually like, we're trying to help Michael like spread the word, like get journalists to cover this. And it's hilarious because no one cares. Like at this point, no one has picked up this pitch. And it's like, you guys, like, this is such an impactful story. Like you can talk to the refugee who went through it, who like literally saw his parents die in front of his eyes when he was 9 years old. And now like this is positively impacting him. But it's like, well, we'd rather cover the rug pulls or the, whatever it is.
Why not? I mean, neither Kyle or I are PR experts. So, I guess to me, it seems obviously if you sent, I don't exactly know what the process is to get a story like that picked up, but if you sent that to me, I would think, for sure, I would.
You would write about it. What do you want? You're a reporter. Like I used to be a reporter. If someone sent me that pitch, I would absolutely write that story. I think they will. I don't think we've reached the right reporters yet. I mean, and Danielle and I are newer. Like we've had hospital stories like on NBC Nightly News, the Today Show, like all these places. But it's a whole different set of reporters that would be writing about tech for those same outlets. So like, I do think that's part of it is like building up your producer relationships that like, that they trust you, you trust them. Sure. I think that's part of it. So I do think it's a matter of time, but I don't know. Someone needs to cover that story, right? Like we've got to get it out there.
Totally. Well, I'm going to be in NYC for NFT NYC, and I would love to sit down with Michael and do an interview. So there we go. We got one story.
Yeah, perfect. He would love to. He's so kind and giving of like his knowledge. He's amazing. So I'm sure he'd love to talk to you.
Danielle, what are your thoughts? Why there's so many issues with the media and Web3 and the current state of how the industry is doing in the media?
Yeah, I mean, I think Krystin really nailed it with everything she said. They're just really only interested right now in the scans and the negative aspect of Web3. So I think we haven't found the right reporters yet. So we just need to keep working. And I think a big part of our job too is to help educate them that it's not all negative, and there are really good, heartfelt human interest stories that we know that they're interested in. And so just getting them more familiar with Web3 and more comfortable writing about it and writing about different aspects of it that aren't negative, I think is really important for us to do. So just working on that relationship building and finding the right people and helping them to understand a little bit more about what's going on.
Danielle, do you want to tell them about Amanda? Because that's actually an example of us like onboarding a journalist. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, so there's a reporter in San Francisco that she actually used to live in Indianapolis and work here where we are. So we have a good working relationship with her, but she's now in San Francisco, and we started talking to her about Web3 and crypto and trying to get her to cover some of our stories. And she was definitely hesitant at first, but she's started to become more interested in it, and her station wants her to start covering it and start a series, like educating people from the very beginning, the most basic concepts, and helping them understand a little bit more about Web3 and crypto. So we've been working with her on that to, and it's a learning journey for her too. So it's kind of like she's starting her Web3 journey and taking her viewers along for the ride. So we're really excited to work with her on that.
So is the idea in the PR world is, I guess, to find reporters who will write about the stuff that are educated enough to understand it and actually be able to write like good content about it. And so the idea from, PR people, let's say from Coinbase and Binance and all the big companies around the world that are in crypto and Web3, is that like something that they're trying to do? Or is there a DAO that does this? Like who is like actively trying to educate reporters right now so that they understand what the heck's going on here? Is there anyone doing this, or is this a DAO we need to start?
I do think that some of those larger companies have PR teams, right? But I mean, I think it's worth noting that like they probably are trying to do that, but it's really hard to write a Web3 pitch to a reporter because they don't understand the basic principles. So like if you just think about like any thought or story you were going to want to share, like you really, it's almost like crafting that pitch so that you can still get your point across of like what the actual news is, but like helping like dumbing it down, right? Enough to where they understand it. But no, so yeah, I don't think that there's any DAOs about it. That's actually, I think that would be interesting, right? Like it'd be nice to have like a cool people have all the best stories, because Danielle and I, like, we literally just see people post like Michael, like the story I shared on Twitter. Like if I see something like that on Twitter, I just DM people and I'm like, hey, I would love to volunteer my time to like pitch this story, because I care about it. Like it drives me crazy that I only see the bad stories, right? And Proxy is still in stealth mode, like still building. So like we have the capacity to do that right now. I know we won't soon. But yeah, it's definitely like a little pet project for both of us.
You mentioned before, and I just want to go back to it, Web3 doesn't sting so much in media. Crypto, you said flat out they hate. And then you really cringed at NFTs.
Yeah.
I'm curious what your thoughts are of the stories behind these different words, and the language that we use obviously is so important in storytelling. What are the safe words to use? What are the not so safe words to use? What do you think?
I don't think you can get around using those words. Unfortunately, like you still have to use the word. If the pitch is about NFTs, you have to use it. I think we're in this uncomfortable period of like, you just have to like keep pushing through the uncomfortable period until you get the good stories out there to help change people's opinion. But yeah, I don't think people like Web3, most people just don't know what it is, right? So I think that's the reason they don't feel as negative about it. But I don't, Danielle, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think when they see Web3, they just think,
like,
what that idea that is. And when they see crypto, they just immediately think of the scams or losing money.
Or they feel like they got left behind because they're like, oh, everyone already got rich on it. Like I didn't get a CryptoPunk or an ape. Well, so it's over. So it's like almost like they want it to fail just because they didn't get that, right? Like that's why we have to show them all the good things people are building. Like, oh my, like we're still so early, right? Like you see every once in a while I see like studies released. It's like, this is how many people in the world have NFTs or wallets that have NFTs or whatever. And it's like so small, It's really, really small when you think about it. So yeah, I think some people just feel like they missed the bus and that bums them out.
Yeah, which, as you said, is not true, but I think fear plus this FOMO it makes people uncomfortable, and you'd rather hate it than try to understand it, because it's easier to just say, oh no, I don't like that, than it is to put in the effort to understand it. You told a great story about Michael. I'm curious, are there any other stories that you've seen or you know about that you would like to see picked up, or positive stories in Web3?
We're some of the ones we're working on with Amanda is just showing education NFTs. Like my first NFT was Astro Girls Society. It's like pretty small, but I literally like joined it because if you have the NFT, then it unlocks your, like, you get a one-on-one mentor and like access to like the weekly education series. So I was like, well, sure, like I'll buy this NFT just so that I can like be in this community of other women who are learning Web3 together. So like, I think those are interesting ones to see. I'm obsessed with Drifter Shoots, whatever. I don't know if you guys know him.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But that has made it, like, he's been in the New York Times and stuff, right? Yeah. But like, I think that is an incredible story of like his, like, I have a PR crush on him. Like I get PR crushes on like these little things that happen where I'm like, oh, that's such a good story. Or like, oh my God, I wish I represented you so that we could like share this story or something, you know? Those are the biggest ones that I can think of.
Can we give a little bit of context to our listeners around Drifter Shoots? Because I'm sure many people don't know about that story.
Yeah, I can. You guys might know more than me. Or I can if you want me to, though.
Yeah, you can go. You go first. I'll do my best to fill it in. Okay. I know a little bit about it.
Okay. Well, as I understand it, he's a veteran who came home with like PTSD, and his outlet to like feel better, express himself, deal with his pain was like he climbs really tall buildings and bridges, and that's actually illegal. It's private. He's trespassing, right? But what is it called? Urban exploring or urban hiking? I don't know. It has a name, what he does. But anyways, he is a great photographer. And so he takes his camera with him when he climbs up to these buildings and takes a picture at the top where you can see his feet. And he's like off the side of a skyscraper or off the side of a bridge looking down. And they're literally breathtaking. Like it makes you like, you get a little bit of anxiety when you look at it, but you're like, oh, it's so beautiful too. And then like when you learn the story behind it, it's just like that much more interesting. But he got into a lot of trouble, and I do think he went to jail for a little while.
Yeah, for a year, I think. He went to jail for a considerable period of time.
Yeah. But he was eventually released, and now his NFTs are selling at Sotheby's for like millions, right? Like, and he's actually really cool because photography NFTs, those aren't even like, that's a little smaller subset, right? But like I have, from working in sports, I have a lot of photographer friends who are so talented, and I'm like, oh man, I wonder if you guys could like do something. I was like, I don't know enough to tell you what to do, but like, I don't think that like, maybe it will be something and maybe you should be doing it now. But yeah, so, and he like got sponsored by Vans because he's wearing Vans when he takes the picture. So this is like, I mean, this guy is like absolutely kicking butt at everything now, right? And I just think that's an incredible story of redemption. And NFTs, like they changed his life.
What I remember is that when he got out of jail, he released and did an NFT drop of some of his photos, and it got a lot of attention because of who he was, and he had all these shots of on top of buildings, you said prior, but the photos he did on this drop were very different because I think it was called something like My First Day Out or something like that, and it was about his energy and excitement for being out. And at that time in the NFT space, everyone was about utility. And so he dropped these NFTs, and all the news was not about how he got out of jail and how it was, he had donated a percentage of royalties. I think it was, big percentage of royalties are donated to some prison reform organization. And, but everybody, all the NFT world was just well, where's my utility? I spent so much on this NFT, but there's no utility. It's just a photograph, which is funny. I mean, it's a separate conversation. We don't need to go down the should NFTs have utility and when is an NFT art not conversation. That's a separate thing. But yeah, I do remember that was the reason it came up in my world, was there was just this blow up of, yeah, where's the utility?
Yeah, but it gives you an emotion. Like for my side, I'm like, I love art, and like to me it's just like I have like such a reaction every time I see one of his photos, and I've seen a lot, but like it doesn't go away. So I don't know, he's special, I think, anyway.
I think in this space there's a lot of really good things happening, a lot of really cool projects being built, really cool DAOs, really cool NFTs for good causes, etc. But like you said, PR is not picking it, like the media, is not picking it up at all. And I think many of our listeners have really cool stories and things, but not many of our listeners, I'm sure, and probably not many in Web3 in general, like DAOs and NFT projects, have PR people. So they don't necessarily have the expertise. We have some expertise on the show right now. So I'm just curious, if you were to, I don't know if it's want to break down a framework, but if you were to give some advice to others in the Web3 space that are doing really cool things, like you say, things that are like heartwarming and like can be really good stories, what do you recommend they do? How do they get this kind of stuff picked up? Like, what's your process?
Yeah, I think a really good way to start is to just really keep tabs on, who's writing about this kind of stuff, who's interested in crypto and Web3, what reporters are writing about it, and how are they covering it. And just kind of start to keep a list of those people that you think may be interested in what you're working on, or maybe more receptive to your story. And just be aware of, what's in the news this week in crypto, and how is there a rug pull going on that's going to overshadow my story, or should I wait until next week? That kind of thing. And just taking note of how other companies are being represented in the media, and what they're saying, how they're handling things, and how that is received by the public. I think a lot of really good lessons can be learned from that. And then just really uncovering those golden nuggets of stories that are really have a human connection that people can connect with, are going to be the ones that are most likely to get picked up, I think.
Okay, interesting.
And you can DM him on Twitter. Yeah, I was going to add, you don't need to it doesn't have to be like a formal written pitch. Like you can just message them on Twitter, or you can reply to something that they've tweeted. It doesn't have to be so formal or formulaic or whatever. I think that's how it's going to be in the future. But yeah, and I do think when you come out with a fancy new product and it'll get you, I think it's important to think about what your goals are. Do you want to see it in Wired or whatever tech publication that was always going to cover something like this? Or is your goal do you want to bring more people to Web3? So then maybe it needs to go to these mainstream outlets where you're going to have eyeballs on it that aren't the people that already know what it is. Anyways, I think that's what we've been focusing on recently, is to just try to get it the wider views. But it all depends on what you're if you just need to have a splash and then maybe your board or fundraising need it whatever, then that's good, and maybe those that's all you need to do. But there's a world outside of our little insular world too.
And how do you craft a story for PR? So many of these projects, Web3 projects out there, they would love PR, I'm sure, but I think that the natural would be just to talk about your product and talk about what you're doing. And does that is that really, I feel like PR might not be looking for that, because they're well, now I'm just doing an ad for your company, right? Which I'm guessing they're not interested in that. So what are the steps, or how would you guide somebody to craft a story for journalists and for media?
I would find a person who was positively impacted by using your product. That's what it has to be, because then you tell it through them. When Danielle and I worked at the hospital, if there was like some new fancy imaging equipment, whatever, like you don't go to the reporter and say like, this machine is the best machine ever and it costs this much money and it's going to make the hospital this much money. Like,
right.
you go and find the person who the machine caught the cancer in, and then they got treatment and now they're living their life with their family and friends and like doing everything that they always wanted to do because the machine caught their medical issue and save their life. So that's my approach. I don't know if that's everyone's approach, but like, I think humanizing things is like a great hack to get your products covered for sure.
Danielle, I know I'm going to just jump over a sec here because I know you're building community for Proxy right now. And I think there's a little bit of tie-in around celebrating your community members and what Krystin is talking about. Any thoughts, and as you build your community, how do you engage your communities to share these stories? How do you get these from your community members? Have you been able to do that, or do they just kind of naturally happen?
Yeah, so we've started building a community around our PX Dev Hub, which is a co-working space in San Francisco, open to anyone working on Web3 projects. And so when in the process of onboarding people and getting them access to the space and into our Twitter community and Discord, we ask them to tell us a little bit about what they're working on, what their projects is, and what their projects are, and connect them with others who are already in the group who may be working on something similar. But something that we are starting actually this week is a new Twitter space series that's going to be called PX Unplugged. And each week we'll have a new community member on to talk about what project they're working on and just give them a chance to share everything they're working on and what their pain points are, if they're looking for people with specific skills to join them or anything like that. And I think that'll be a really good way for people to just connect with each other within our community and learn a little bit more about what people are working on and stuff like that. So we're really excited about that.
That's great.
There's a little bit of context that's interesting to the Dev Hub. It happened because when we became a Web3 company, the engineers they made a big shift, right? They're working on something totally different now, and they needed time to do that. So then there's like our team, Danielle and I, and there's a couple other people, and we're like, okay, well, we're spending all this time learning about Web3, and that's great, but also because during COVID, our company became completely distributed. So, and they have this beautiful loft office in San Francisco, it's by the stadium, the baseball stadium, Oracle Park, right? Is that what it is? So we're like, well, we're gonna have our product eventually, and we're going to need to be able to ask people, have a networked product, here it is, here's, do you like it? What don't you like? What should we do with it? So we're like, okay, well, no one's using the office. Let's just open it up to let anyone in San Francisco who is building in Web3 to come in, and then they'll all be able to network with each other. And, it's grown so fast. We quickly connected with it's Web3 crypto startups in San Francisco. It's a little meetup group, but they're they're huge. They're so, it's they get together. I think they do 3 or 4 seminars or meetups a month, and they do one in-person meetup at the Dev Hub every month, and where a speaker comes in, and it's just people who are building, and they talk about what they're building, and it's there's 80 people there, and it's really, really fun. And it's just interesting because I don't think it was literally just an empty space and not doing anything. And now all of a sudden it's this living, breathing thing, and people are in there working every single day. And it's just it's been really fun to watch that happen in 2.5 months. It's crazy.
That's amazing. We will be sure to share in the show notes for our listeners. If you're in San Fran and you want to find out more about PX Dev Hub, I wish I was in San Fran. I would definitely go work there. There's nothing like that where I live. So that sounds fantastic.
Yeah. And if they're interested, they can just send us a DM on Twitter at Proxy.
Awesome. So going back to what Web3 companies can be doing to get PR for themselves. I know one thing you mentioned before the podcast was preparing for crisis. Crisis communication is a difficult thing within PR. How should Web3 companies have a crisis communication plan? Is that something that should be on their mind? Can it be simple? Like, I just curious to get your thoughts on that, because honestly, it's not even something that would ever cross my mind. I'd probably wait until I got hit by the bus to deal with it.
If you can have a crisis, you should probably have a plan to handle it, right? Danielle is really good at this. I feel like she should jump in.
Yeah, definitely everyone should have a crisis plan, because it's not if we have a crisis, it's when we have a crisis. There's always going to be something, whether big or small, that comes up. And so it's best to just be prepared. I mean, obviously you never know what exactly is going to happen, but if you can kind of think through your most likely scenarios of what might happen, or what we would do in this type of situation, that's going to help you move a little bit quicker and more efficient when it does happen.
In front of it with the messaging, like if you can have a message ready, then it doesn't just have to be what crypto Twitter is saying about what happened. Right. Like they can come to and see your messaging. So it helps you shape the narrative a little bit more.
And I think
control it, but you can help shape.
Right.
In Web3, everything is basically financialized. So I feel like every Web3 company should have a crisis communication plan, because if you're holding any user, not holding user money, but you just think if there's a token involved, there's definitely a chance a crisis can happen. I think we're all going through a crisis right now with this bear market. And you want to be able to have something in plan for your community, for your audience, for your users, whatever. Just curious, you said try to get ahead of the story. What are your sort of tactics that you would use if a crisis happens? Like the one I think of is like Optimism, which is a layer 2 for Ethereum, has been amazing. I feel like their PR has been incredible. Their sort of like story that they've been telling on social has been incredible. And all of a sudden they sent a transaction of like 20% of their tokens that they just airdropped to the wrong place and it got hacked. And I was like, no, they've been doing everything right this whole time. And here's a crisis. When things like that happen, these accidents, or maybe it's an accidental rug pull or someone hacks you, like, what is the plan? Is it just get ahead of it? Or is it like, what do you guys think about, or what are you trying to do whenever something like that happens?
I think you have to acknowledge what happened, number one. And then from there, you have to very quickly show that what your plan is moving forward. Like, okay, this happened. Here's what we can, what steps we've taken. And this would be different in every single case. So it's hard to give examples, but it's like, here's the steps that we're doing to help the people that got hurt, like that are our people, right? Or our community members or whatever. Here's what they can do to minimize the damage that has happened or losses or whatever. And then here's 2 or 3 things that are going to be done immediately to help this never happen again. Like, I think that's like a vague way of handling it. I don't know, Danielle, did I?
I completely agree. You definitely want to acknowledge what happened. You don't want to be vague or brushing things under the rug or anything like that. I think it's important to acknowledge what is going on and to be very clear about what you're going to do to fix it, or to address it, and to show real compassion, I think, is really important in a statement too. You don't want to come off as cold or corporate or just self-serving. You want to let your stakeholders or your clients or whoever it may be know that you care about them and you're going to do whatever you can to act in their best interest to make it better.
So it's all about transparency, which I mean is one of the ethos of Web3 anyway, right? Like we have these public, open, permissionless blockchains, and this is what the Web3 community loves, right? Is this sort of transparency of everything, instead of centralized organizations which are holding and sort of like keeping everything private. So Celsius, who's the one currently going insolvent at the moment, if someone from Celsius is listening, you guys need to improve your PR, because right now they are in crisis and they are not saying anything. So I guess that's a tip that they can take right away.
You can't hide under a rock forever. Like
Right.
it's not going to get better just because you're still under the rock, unfortunately. I mean, and there is like, it's not fun to go through, like when the things, when Twitter and Discord are like on fire about what has happened. Like, I mean, it's not fun for anyone, but like, it's only worse if you ignore it. It doesn't get better.
The other advice that I would give, and the reason I can give advice on this is I previously have gone through a crisis at an old company that I worked at, where somebody died, like a customer of ours died on we were a travel company, and they died on one of our trips. Now, it was not our fault, but we were placed in blame because of the way the media picked up the story. And we did everything that you said. We were transparent and came out and were open about it from the beginning, but it didn't matter. The media had picked their angle and they stuck with it. So the next thing that we really focused on was our own people. And that became, looking back, I wish we spent more time on this, was getting our team together and keeping them tight and sharing as much as we can with them, because the outcome of the situation was, not only did it affect our business financially, it affected our team in probably the biggest way, and our culture, because when the media catches a story and your aunt or uncle is like, oh, don't you work at that company? Like, they're bad. The media just told me they're bad. And you're not confident in your answer, and you're not able to address that from the perspective, because basically every single person in crisis, every single person at your company becomes a spokesperson for your company, even though they're probably not trained for it and they're not capable of it, right? And that was probably the biggest thing that I saw going through that situation, was like, it's so important to keep the family and keep the team together, and do whatever you can do to make people understand the situation so that they can make their own decision, as opposed to just going the direction of the media, because usually it's the easy way to go.
No, people always forget about internal communication. Like, it's so important, and it's its own animal. And a lot of times it gets lumped together, like with PR, PR people are expected. It's like people assume they know exactly what they're doing, but like, we really don't. It's completely different. And I think Danielle and I both have a little bit of experience with internal comms too. Like, for example, if your CEO goes out and like does something crazy, you should acknowledge it and be like, hey, here's, either we're sorry, like apologize to them, right? And like, you can even give them like, here's what you say if your neighbor says this, if your mom says this. Not like you have to say this, but like, here, because people want, like, our engineers they'll always ask us like, can you just tell me what to say? Like, they just want to know, like, it's our brains, like, if we see like just simple little like bullet point information, like, so much easier for us to recall that than to just like sputter on the spot and like wiggle uncomfortably and just not know what to say. So that's really important.
I feel like that's escalated even further in Web3, because this internal comms, because in Web3, it's all about community. We talk about this like all the time, is that your community is so important. And so you have your internal team typically when you have a project in Web3, but then you also have this like bigger community that might own your NFT or your tokens or whatever. And I feel like the same thing probably applies to them. You want to educate them too. You want to be transparent to them, and maybe even give them the words that they should be saying.
It's like all internal comms. Like, I feel like community building, public relations, internal comms, like, they're all the same thing. And like, to some extent, like, even marketing is getting lumped in now. Like, and it's like, it's all this, it's like all in the same family. It's super related.
All right, let's shift gears to chat a little bit about Proxy. So tell us, I mean, and maybe you're not sure because you weren't in old Proxy very long, but why did Proxy make the transition to Web3? How's it going? What's the focus? I know you guys have got some stuff in the works that's a bit, behind closed doors and maybe you can't talk about right now, but whatever you can give us, what's going on over at Proxy?
Yeah, start with what Proxy is, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily know the whole details of it.
Danielle, you want this one?
Sure. So we are building kind of like a backpack for the crypto world. So it's a tool that's going to have lots of different aspects to it that will just kind of be everything that you need to get through the Web3 and crypto journey that people are on. So when we first started with Proxy, we were building we were working on digital identity. So your driver's license, your proof of vaccine card was all digital on your phone. And then with that, you could, we had door access readers. So you could use your digital identity to unlock doors that you had access to at your office or things like that. But really the basis behind all of this is owning your own data and having all of your data secure and being in control of what information you're putting out there and when you can recall it back. And so to make that as secure as possible, it really became clear that this needed to be a Web3 project. And that's when we kind of made the shift over to Web3. So I don't know if I explained that very well.
And there's like, I can't wait until, gosh, I feel like we're getting close, like in the next month or so, like we'll have a lot more of information, be less stealth mode to share. But yeah, it's been really exciting to watch them build. And while we've been waiting on them to build, our little team has done a little bit of our non-tech. We have a couple technical people actually on our team too. So we realized that our team happens to all be women, like for whatever reason. It is. And we realized that like right off the bat, we were like, oh, I wish there was like a Yelp for Web3. Like, I wish there was just, because like we were researching all of these wallets and just for ourselves, like so that we could purchase digital currency for the first time or buy an NFT for the first time. And like continued searching and searching and searching. And I was like, everything I'm finding is just like the wallet's website. Like it's just the marketing material of the project. I was like, I don't trust this. Like I want to hear from someone not affiliated with this company, like if this is a good product or not. So yeah, our little passion project is like building a Yelp of Web3 through like just like women's experiences. Like you come and just share like what your experience was and it's left there, and then they start accumulating and everyone can come and see. Because I think women, there's like statistics that women make their purchasing decisions based off of reviews more than like hearing directly from a source or like seeing someone else do it. Like they need to see that it's like their language, it's what works for us. So that's something fun that we're working on while we wait to come out of stealth mode.
And is that live? Can we access that? It sounds fantastic, by the way. I love it.
I know you've had Anna Seacat on your podcast before. Anna, it's close. Like Anna is our fearless leader, and we're I think like at the end of June there'll be like a website that you can go to and start poking around. So we're getting really close.
Okay, well, we'll update the show notes. We're mid-June right now when we're recording this. We'll update the show notes when that comes out for those who listen after June.
Sorry, we should have postponed a couple of weeks.
No, that's okay. Yeah, no, that's okay. In PR world, you got to keep moving forward. Everybody's building, it never ends.
And with Proxy, you mentioned it's like a backpack for Web3, which is that's very interesting. Is this like, I mean, we have wallets for Web3. Is this like a better version of a wallet? Is that like it's more encompassing, or can you dive into that at all?
We can give one hint.
Okay.
think wearables. So
Okay.
yeah, I don't think we can share much more than that, but that's a pretty big component of what we're working on. It's not an actual backpack, but it is something like that would be really funny. But yeah, think wearables, and that's kind of the direction they're heading in.
Cool. Well, we will share links to Proxy where people can keep an eye on what's going on, whether their Twitter or their website, and that as well. Jay, you have
what
something
is the timeline for the Proxy project?
I think like they were looking at September as like actually, I mean, more stuff will come out before then, but like where people are actually like using the product, I think will be September.
Yeah. It's funny when you say wearable. Now I used to instantly think hardware, hard good, but now I actually think, is it a wearable in the metaverse or is it a wearable in real life?
That's what I was thinking too.
Really good question.
Could be either. Could be both.
I did go to my first like metaverse party a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, I have so much to learn. I was like, I don't know what anyone's doing. Like it's so interesting. I do love that. Like that's probably one of my favorite things about this whole space is that I literally learn something every day.
Right.
Super.
Totally. Tell us a little bit about the party. Where was it? Which metaverse were you in? What'd you do?
I have actually, this is a fun story for non-technical people in Web3. I'm a PR person, but like I was a writer first. So I was like, how am I going to contribute? Like, I want to be in a community that I'm actually like doing something for so that I feel like more invested. So it was actually for Astro Girls that I mentioned is the first NFT I purchased. I interviewed all the founders of that project and wrote a blog about them, like just basically their whole like origin story and what their plan was for the project. And they paid me by giving me a My BFF bracelet. So, which was crazy. Like to me, like that was, before that project minted, like I could have sold that for $6,000. And and that was something from nothing, like from someone who's never had an NFT before. Like I've never gotten paid $6,000 for a newspaper article. Like that's what we should tell journalists that, and then maybe
there you go.
We should make note of that. Like that's maybe the direction we need to go in.
Yeah.
We'll get their attention at least.
Incentives.
Yeah, but from there, so like you basically they did like their unveil for what their like perks were for whatever NFT ended up minting was in the metaverse. So that was my first experience.
Okay, awesome.
And you got a wearable, you got a t-shirt. So in the metaverse, so that ties in with what you were talking about.
There you go.
So Jay has some speed round questions as we wrap up here for you guys. Are you both ready to do just a couple speed round questions?
Sure.
Perfect.
Okay. I asked this first question, but Krystin, you can't say an NFT you've already said, or maybe you can, but what's an NFT you'll never sell?
Well, I only have like 3. So I was with my Astro Girls. It's like sentimental for sure.
Yeah, I only have a couple as well, but I'll probably never sell my first Astro Girl because it was my first NFT that I ever got. So
right.
I'd like to.
Cool. Favorite person to follow on Twitter?
Drifter Shoots. Obsessed. Already mentioned him. Love him. And our friend Regan. She is like our Regan, not Reagan is her handle, but she like started onboarding at the exact same time we did, and she like made a Twitter handle and overnight got like 1,000 followers just because she was like, I'm gonna do Web3 onboarding, and everyone followed her, and she like literally onboarded our entire team at Proxy to Web3. And she's a graduating senior at USC. Like that's like I think that's just crazy about Web3 that like all of my mentors are like 10 years younger than me.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Regan is a great person to follow, but also Krystin is one of my favorite people to follow on Twitter because she finds a really good Twitter threads and crypto Twitter threads that are just breaking down like either news or some big concept into something that's more digestible, and she'll always retweet them or add her own comments on them. So I really enjoy following you, Krystin.
Thanks, Danielle. I do love adding my own little commentary. Can't help myself.
Amazing. Any upcoming Web3 projects that you're excited about? NFT, DAO, protocol, tool, could be anything.
I would say that this isn't super specific, but I am actually, because I'm like, I don't know, punish myself. I'm also doing real estate school right now, just as like something else that I wanted to learn about. I'm really interested in, I've only seen snippets of it, but like how NFTs can play in with real estates and deeds. And I just think there's a lot to think about on that, because it's I'm learning real estate. It's like a very antiquated system, right? Like it has a lot of room to improve and get more.
Oh, does it ever?
And just ownership in general. Like I think that Web3, when you think about that in the real estate world, like, oh my God, the opportunities are endless of like how we could actually make the world a better place potentially. So I'm definitely following that whole area pretty closely.
Danielle?
I think the thing I'm most excited about is our side project, because we're going to be launching that really soon. So I'm just excited to see how that goes and how it's received, and how it can help women be more comfortable in the space. So I'm really excited about that.
Is there a name?
Yeah, it's called Glypta, GLYPTA. And you'll have to have Anna. You guys should definitely have Anna back on, because the branding and market that like went into it, like that word, it means something specific, and it's like a thread. I think what is, Danielle, it's like, it's a stone, like that's a precious stone that's like carved. And it like, if you think about that, like if it's like a rating system, like you can kind of imagine like where we might go with like threading that through branding and themes and all that.
Yeah, it was very well thought out. I think you would really enjoy talking with Anna about it, because she's definitely the brains behind the branding.
Amazing. Yeah, we had Anna on the podcast like 2 months ago, I think, on the panel podcast when we talked about marketing and Web3 and marketing in the metaverse. And yeah, she's a fantastic guest. Definitely look to have her back on. Well, that's all the speed round questions I've got for today. This has just been an absolute joy. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge. I learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners did too.
Well, thanks for having us. It was such fun. I can't believe like that hour went by really, really fast. I could have gone on for another hour. So thank you for having us.
Yeah, we'll have to get you back on after in September, whenever the Proxy launch happens. It'd be great to get you back on and chat about that.
We'd love to.
All right.
Thanks, Danielle. Thanks, Krystin. That was great.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for listening to Web3 Academy. We hope this helps you along your Web3 journey. And if it does, please share this episode and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. By the way, if you've yet to join the Discord community, you are missing out. This is where all the magic happens. This is where we learn, where we ask questions, where we network. You want to be in there. The link to join is in the description below. And finally, a quick disclaimer. Nothing in this podcast was financial advice. Crypto and Web3 can be risky. You can literally lose it all. In fact, if you invest on account of what we say, you probably will lose it all. So don't do that. In all honesty, the point of this podcast is to remove the noise of markets and price and focus on utility and implementation anyway. So you should not take any of this as financial advice. Thank you, friends, and see you in the next one.